welcome the opening speaker for the proposition side. Let's put your hands together, people.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jake Bird. I am the first speaker for the proposition side. I am the first speaker for the proposition side on the topic that a constitutional convention would do more good than harm. I'm going to first define the terms, go through our plan, and then summarize our contentions and go into our first two. So, definitions. We are defining constitutional convention as any meeting of people in this country to discuss and alter the Constitution. Our plan. Delegates from all 50 states, proportional to the number of congressional districts, elected by ranked popular voting in each state. The issues discussed at the convention will also be voted on by popular vote at the same time as the delegates are voted on. There will be 59 supervising officials, 25 from each major political party selected by the national committees, and 9 nonpartisan officials elected by the Supreme Court. 1 Democrat, 1 Republican, and 1 nonpartisan voted by the delegates will form the moderating panel. After 60% of the delegates agree to change, 2/3 of the state governments must agree, and if anything is deemed unconstitutional, it will go to the Supreme Court. Lastly, I'd just like to mention that the goal of the proposition side is to have a constitutional convention at a maximum of 50 years. Although if the public decides that they would like to have another earlier for any reason, we are completely open. Okay, our contentions. Our first contention is outdated Constitution, which I'll go into. Our second contention is discourse. I'll say half, and our second speaker will say half. And our third contention is subverting Congress, which will be said by our second speaker. So, contention one. First, language. The language in the Constitution should reflect our national ideals. An example is replacing man with person, because that's what we believe as a country. Also, the Intercollegiate Studies Institute coordinated a test of basic civic literacy, specifically about the Constitution. The result? 71% of Americans failed, and the average score was a 49%. This means that the average American knows less than half of the basic rights of our country. If we change the Constitution, we can make it understandable for the whole public in general. Our second point here is judiciary, because a huge part of court, in fact, arguably the most important job of the court, is judicial review, which is whether something is constitutional based on syntax. If we clarify the Constitution, there wouldn't be any issues with this judicial review. An additional bonus is that the writers of the Constitution would still be around to interpret the Constitution in case any problems arise. Our last subpoint on this contention is modernization. Our country and the world has changed a lot in the past few centuries. The internet, telephone, light, there are many, many ones of them. And we should adjust our Constitution to reflect these ideas. First of all, change. Oh, sure.
Ways to modernize the Constitution besides having a constitutional convention.
Correct. And actually, there is that in the second contention called discourse, which is basically that if the public is brought up about this issue, which can only happen in a constitutional convention, then the public will be more motivated to make changes such as changing the Constitution in the future. Now, although it can harm, like you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, it is thought of as a basic law. It's not actually in the Constitution. I mean, come on, why not we should have a constitutional convention just to clarify things like this. Also add, because the internet is so much more prevalent in this day than, let's say, gun control, we should add more laws on internet safety, which actually affects most of us. Our second contention is discourse. Discourse is discussion and debate around the issue. The Constitutional Convention would bring the Constitution to the forefront of our national consciousness. The worst possible scenario for the proposition side in this debate is that the Constitutional Convention would not hold. However, discourse would still be an impact. That is why in our plan we would like to have that another Constitutional Convention in the years, because it will lead to people understanding the Constitution, which makes them lead to the best possible Constitution. Lastly, this Constitutional Convention will encourage people to take part in political issues, which again will ultimately lead to the best possible set of basic rights of our country. So for all of those reasons, I urge you to cast a vote for the proposition side.
Judges ready? Hello judges, my name is Zara Yusuf. I'm the first opposition speaker for this debate. Here's my roadmap. First, I will go over my opponent's points and refute them. Then I will go on and say the opposition team's theme, and then I will say our first three assertions. So our opponent said that this is an outdated constitution, and the language should represent the people, and it should be modern, and it should talk about internet safety. And we agree, it should be modernized, but there are other ways other than a constitutional convention. The way it should do it is 2/3 of the Senate and 2/3 of the House of Representatives can bring up a point they want to be in the Constitution. Then 3/4 of the states have to ratify. We do not need a constitutional convention to amend the Constitution. These are really my opponent's points, so this knocks down all of them. So on the opposition team, our theme is the only precedent we would have to work with is the Constitutional Convention of 1787, which threw the Articles of Confederation in the trash and started over, with no way to enforce limits on the preceding sweeping changes that could be made, and the entire Constitution could be at risk because of this Constitutional Convention. Are we ready to risk the Constitution and this country? No thank you, particularly in our current and deeply partisan political climate? I think not. I will go over this in my assertions. Our first assertion is a runaway convention would put our Constitution and the whole entire nation at risk.
I'd just like to comment as first opposition speaker that our plan would make sure that the runaway convention would not happen and that our entire Constitution.
At the original Constitutional Convention, as I will bring up my points again, they changed many rules, and when at the Constitutional Convention, they could decide that they didn't want this. In the original Constitutional Convention, all of the states had to ratify the amendment, but in the beginning, they had to do that, but in the Constitutional Convention, they changed it, no thank you, to 9 out of the 13 states. So they can change whatever they want in the Constitutional Convention. So back to my assertion. A runaway convention is a convention which acts beyond the scope and authority of what parties contemplated when they applied for the convention in the first place. Conservatives and liberals alike also agree with this logic. The conservative Antonin Scalia said in 2014, "I certainly would not want a constitutional convention. Who knows what can come out of it?" And the liberal professor Lawrence Todd of Harvard Law School said, "What you're doing is putting the whole Constitution up for grabs." This proposition team is saying putting the whole Constitution up for grabs is good. This is not good at all. The only precedent we have is the Philadelphia Convention in 1787 that wrote our Constitution. This was a convention which was called under a resolution to revise and amend our Articles of Confederation to increase trade among the states. The first thing the delegates did after arriving in Philadelphia was throw the Articles of Confederation in the trash and start from scratch, designing a wholly new and powerful central government. Even worse, the instructions the delegates had from their state was that ratification would require unanimous agreement of the 13 states, as I said already, for revision. Instead, delegates changed the rules of voting at the convention and deemed the new constitution to go into effect without the ratifying states. The impact of this is the Constitution, one second please, can change our country. The Constitutional Convention can change our whole country. We do not know what will happen. The delegates threw out the Articles of Confederation, and these delegates may throw out the Constitution we have today right now. Yes.
Judges, the speaker presents a powerful image for you, and certainly one that has happened. However, that was a totally different scenario. Delegates weren't elected, and there are many few safeguards put in place compared to our plan.
Even though there weren't that many safeguards, they changed whatever they wanted, and they can change those safeguards at the convention, so it's really there's no safety in this. Our second assertion is, this isn't the time to hold a constitutional convention. There are two sub-assertions to this. Our first sub-assertion is, from demigods to demagogues. Thomas Jefferson was ambassador to France and could not attend, but the one and only Constitutional Convention, he called it an assembly of
proposition on the topic of a constitutional convention will do more good than harm. First, there are a few other team's points, then go into my own team's points, and add to the points that our first speaker. Okay, they said that a runaway convention will happen, but the truth is that our plan puts a lot more safeguards than in 1787. Our plan puts delegates which are not partisan, and we also put supervising officials and supermajorities to protect against this very thing. Our plan makes sure that a runaway convention is nearly impossible, so that this is just not going to happen. We'll say it's not the time and that Hillary Clinton or convention, but we also said there's definitely delegates. This is not going to be a partisan thing. We're going to have delegates decided by a people, so that's nothing on our case.
Still not the same.
Also, that explains why we needed a constitutional convention in the first place. Issues. So that brings me into
Judges, we already stated that there's other ways to amend the Constitution other than a constitutional convention, and these are safer ways.
I'm going to explain right now why actually the constitutional convention is the best way to do this exact thing. Okay, discourse. I'm going to add subpart B, which is preparing the legal process. Our nation is divided, as you said, the Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump thing. And according to the Washington Post, if campaigns are always about the future, the 2016 one points to a country that is even more divided against itself than it was after the 2012 election. We're having extreme problems with the partisan level, and a constitutional convention will help fix this exact thing. Amendments are decided by this partisan project, this partisan process. How are they going to fix it? Now I'm going to go on to my next contention, subverting Congress. The Congress does not have to approve any change in this convention. This is extremely sensitive blocks against corruption and other issues with the partisan Congress. In our plan, we are using delegates and 2/3 of the states, which means that we are protected against partisan problems, which means that the constitutional convention is better in these issues. Firstly, corruption, as I said. The Congress is corrupt in many ways, and that has been proven through multiple states. Even the American public, 69% of the American public say that members are focused on special issues.
So, Judge, even if Congress was corrupt, they've already made a bunch of amendments that have affected our country in a positive way.
That doesn't mean a constitutional convention won't do a better thing. It's a good than harm. That's 79% of Americans believe that Congress is out of touch with the general public. That is something that most people have to express, and a constitutional convention is the best way to do this exact thing.
Well, judges, who are going to be the delegates? Are they going to be congressmen who are, as proposition just said, are corrupt?
These delegates will be decided by the people for the people. These delegates are not going to still represent the general public, and they will represent our country. Now I'm going to go in and review what my case is saying. We say that our country needs to talk about the Constitution. Most Americans don't actually understand the Constitution. We have to fix this, and that we fix this through discourse. The opposition just leads into amendments that our arguments talk about. Also, Congress is partisan. It should not be deciding these decisions for the nation. These should be decided by a nonpartisan decision. That's the modernization. Our country is very different than it was when the Constitution was drafted, and we have to change to the new times. So thank you, and please vote for the proposition.
Hello, Judge. My name is John. I'm the second speaker for this debate. First, I will refute my opponent's arguments, then rebuild our own, and if time allows, add a few more assertions to our side. So the proposition had three main arguments, the first being that it is an outdated constitution. However, there are other ways than having a constitution to change the amendments. The risk is too much for the small outcome and reward that they are talking about. Their second assertion is about discourse and discussion and debate. We are arguing why we should they are arguing why we should re-amend the Constitution, so why should we have a constitutional amendment, constitutional convention? There's no point in having it when we can re-amend it instead of having the dangerous compromise. So their third assertion is about subverting Congress. And even though Congress they talked about how Congress is corrupt. Even though Congress may be corrupt, it is the reason why our country is as great as it is now. If it weren't for Congress, then I don't even know where America would be. Probably like with anarchy, with riots everywhere. So thank you. Now I will rebuild our argument. So, our first argument was that a runaway convention would prove to be detrimental. And once the Constitutional Convention is started, you have no way to stop it. And this also refutes their plan, because in 1787, when the first Constitutional Convention happened, they had a plan, it was clear-cut, but guess what happened? It was a runaway convention. The same exact thing is going to happen with their plan. So thank you. Now we'll go on to our own assertions. Assertion 2. Article 5 doesn't tell us how a convention would actually work. Reasoning. There's absolutely no rules and no instructions. So how will this process work? I would like to add a quote from former Chief Justice of the U.S., Warren Burger. So in 1988, he wrote, "There is no way to effectively limit the actions of a constitutional convention. The convention could make its own rules and set its own agenda. Congress might try to limit the convention to one amendment or one issue, but there's no way to ensure that the convention would obey, just how they didn't obey in 1787. And after a convention is convened, it will be too late to stop the convention if we don't like its agenda." My evidence for this is, remember that there are two parts of a constitutional convention. First, at least 34 states must call for a convention. Then, at the constitutional convention, the states, through their delegates, must pass proposed amendments. Then, Congress must send the proposed amendments to either one state legislators or two state conventions and get ratification from at least 38 states. So thank you. I can think of many questions of a procedure that are unknown. Who appears at the Who appears at the Constitutional Convention? 2. How are state delegates at the Constitutional Convention chosen? 3. Do all states have the same number of delegates? 4. How are votes taken at the Constitutional Convention? Does each state have one vote? Do more populous states have more votes? 5. What percentage of the vote is needed to pass an amendment? Is it a majority, 2/3, 3/4? 6. What if someone contests the vote? Who decides? 7. If Congress sends proposed amendments to the states at a state convention, who appears at the state convention? Who are the delegates? 8. What percentage of the vote is needed to pass an amendment at the state convention? A simple majority? 2/3, 3/4.
I'd like to remind the second opposition speaker that we mentioned all of the facts in our plan. They seem to think that we have to follow the same procedure as the first constitutional convention, which is simply not the case.
I would also like to say that it doesn't matter what procedure you're using. It doesn't matter your plan, because as we've seen in the past, it will have the same outcome. A runaway convention that will change what this country is built on and prove to be extremely detrimental for everyone. Okay, now we'll go back to my assertion. Significance. There is no authority that would be able to regulate the convention, thus allowing the convention to change the rules and be able to create its own agenda. Once the convention is convened, there would be no stopping it. Once called, the convention could write its own rules, as what happened before. So judges, if you believe in a safe country based on what our founding fathers wanted, I urge you to vote for the opposition side of this debate.
Now we'll get into the rebuttals. So testimony last to the opposition rebuttals.
Hello, Judge. My name is Zach Weasel. First, I'd like to explain your point and impact our points in the way that they show you what the opposition has on their plan stated that they had a plan that stated how a constitutional convention was held. But Judge, the problem with this plan is that there are no past precedents to rely on. We don't know if this plan would actually work. When we had the first constitutional convention, they had a plan, they had a clear plan, and you know what happened? They had a runaway convention. How can we know, how can we be sure that the same thing won't happen? So, that the Constitution is obligated. But as we've seen before, there are other ways to rewrite the Constitution. Congress has done it 27 times and been pretty successful, so we've been living on those amendments. So their second assertion, so we need to learn about political issues. But Judge, there are other ways of learning about political issues than having a constitutional convention. It's just not necessary. Their assertion is that Congress can be corrupt. And to this I say, Judge, even if Congress could be corrupt, it's made very successful amendments over the course of history, Judge. So, these amendments, we've been living off of, and they've been pretty successful, so clearly this is the way to keep going. So, our assertion is, so we talked about a runaway convention. And how a constitutional convention, no one would know what would happen next. So they tried to review their plan, but as we've stated, no one knows how the constitutional convention will work. So now our second assertion is that we are polarized. Our political climate, it's just not a time to hold a constitutional convention. So, Judge, for the last 8 years, we had a president that half the country hates. Now we have a country that president that the other half of the country hates. Judge, we cannot have a constitutional convention when our country is this divided. So, and Judge, this is completely true. Because we have no past precedent to rely on. So, Judge, on our side of this debate, we have a safe and reliable method of rewriting the Constitution, which is we can talk. But on their side, there are so many things that can go wrong. Like, Judge, what if in the Constitutional Convention, 12 of the 12 biggest states, they don't like the decision, and the 38 smaller states do like it? Then what will happen? You know what will happen? Those states will try to secede from the United States. Do we want our country to be
with any excellent debate with outstanding students, there is always the possibility that a panel of judges will reach a split decision, which is appropriate given the high quality of the debate that we've switched. So we have a split decision in this debate, which is, I think, a testament to how fine the debate was, and so we should celebrate that. There's a split decision in this debate, and it's my pleasure to award the second place team for the 2017 championship. So the second place team in this debate is the opposition team from Hatfield.